Deep beneath the bustling streets of New York City lies a labyrinth of darkness and filth that few dare to enter, and even fewer understand. For decades, a terrifying question has echoed through the concrete canyons of Manhattan and the boroughs beyond. Do prehistoric predators stalk the subterranean waterways beneath our feet, waiting for a chance to strike? The legend of alligators in the sewers has captivated the American imagination for nearly a century. It sounds like the plot of a pulp fiction novel or a creature feature film from the golden age of Hollywood. Yet this story is not merely a product of campfire tales or playground whispers. It is rooted in a specific moment in history that blurred the line between myth and reality. To understand the legend, we must first look at the stage where this drama unfolds, because the setting is as important as the monster. The New York City sewer system is a technological marvel and a terrifying abyss that stretches for thousands of miles like a vast circulatory system beneath the metropolis. In the early 20th century, this underground world was a place of mystery and danger, where light rarely touched. Workers descended into the depths to maintain the flow of the city, but they often returned with strange stories of shadows and sounds. The tunnels were dark and damp, and filled with the refuse of millions of people. It was the perfect environment for rumors to fester and grow in the silence. But in the winter of 1935, the rumors suddenly seemed to have teeth. The date was February 9, 1935, and the location was East Harlem near 123rd Street. It was a bitterly cold day, and heavy snow blanketed the city streets, turning the metropolis into a frozen landscape. A group of local teenagers was shoveling snow into a manhole to clear the road for traffic. The work was heavy, and the air was freezing against their skin. As they peered down into the gloom of the sewer shaft, they noticed something moving in the slush and ice below. It was not a rat or a stray dog or a piece of debris. It was a creature that belonged in the swamps of Florida or the bayous of Louisiana. The boys stared in disbelief as a live alligator thrashed in the freezing water below them. Salvatore Condalusi was the leader of the group on that fateful afternoon, and he was just 16 years old. Along with his friends, he realized that the animal was trapped and lethargic from the extreme cold of the New York winter. The boys acted on a mixture of fear and teenage bravado that often leads to trouble. They fashioned a makeshift lasso from a clothesline they found nearby and decided to capture the beast. With the patience of seasoned hunters, they lowered the rope into the sewer darkness. The alligator snapped its jaws, but the cold had slowed its reflexes significantly. After several attempts, they managed to loop the rope around the neck of the reptile and began to haul it up to the surface. The struggle to bring the beast to street level was intense as the animal fought for its life against the rope. The alligator weighed nearly 125 pounds and measured 8 feet in length, which was massive for an urban setting. It fought against the rope and the brick walls of the manhole with surprising strength. When the boys finally pulled it onto the snowy pavement, the creature was hissing and snapping at the freezing air. A crowd began to gather almost immediately to witness the spectacle. People stopped their cars and leaned out of windows to catch a glimpse of the impossible sight. An alligator in the middle of a New York City winter was a spectacle that defied all logic. The excitement quickly turned to chaos as the animal regained some of its strength and began to thrash violently on the icy ground. The boys and the onlookers panicked as the predator snapped its jaws at the gathered crowd. Fearing for their safety, the teenagers decided to kill the alligator with their snow shovels in a frantic defense. It was a brutal end to a strange encounter on the streets of Harlem. When the police arrived, the creature was already dead and lying in the snow. The officers were just as baffled as the civilians were. They inspected the carcass and confirmed that it was indeed a real alligator. The body was eventually taken away by the sanitation department, but the story was far from over. The New York Times published a report on the incident the very next day, and the headline was understated, but the content was sensational. It detailed the discovery and the subsequent death of the animal in a matter-of-fact tone. The article gave the legend a stamp of legitimacy that no rumor could ever achieve on its own. Suddenly, everyone in the city was talking about sewer gators and what else might be down there. Parents warned their children not to play near storm drains or open manholes. Sewer workers became local heroes who braved the depths to keep the city safe from monsters. The story traveled across the country and became a permanent fixture in American folklore. The most popular theory regarding the origin of these creatures involves the souvenir trade of the era. In the 1930s, it was common for families to vacation in Florida and bring back exotic gifts. Roadside attractions and gift shops sold baby alligators as novelty pets to tourists. These tiny reptiles were cute and exotic, and easy to transport back north in a shoebox. Children begged their parents to buy them and keep them in aquariums or bathtubs as living toys. However, baby alligators do not stay small for long. They grow rapidly and become aggressive and difficult to feed. As the novelty wore off and the danger increased, many families looked for a way to get rid of their exotic pets. The theory suggests that overwhelmed owners chose the path of least resistance when dealing with the growing predators. Rather than finding a zoo or a sanctuary, they simply flushed the baby alligators down the toilet. It sounds plausible enough on the surface, as the plumbing was large enough to accommodate a small lizard. The creature would be swept away into the sewer system, and out of sight and out of mind. Most people assumed the animals would die quickly in the harsh environment of the pipes. But the legend posits that some of them survived the journey. It suggests that they adapted to the dark and fed on rats and grew to monstrous sizes beneath the city streets. Enter Teddy May, who was the superintendent of sewers for New York City during this turbulent time. Character Bible: Teddy May is a Caucasian man in his 50s with a weathered face and a thick mustache. He wears a heavy wool coat and a fedora hat and carries a flashlight. He has the stern look of a man who has seen everything. At first, Teddy May dismissed the alligator stories as nonsense and fantasy. He claimed that nothing could survive in the toxic stew of the sewers and chided his men. He called the reports whiskey talk and told his workers to stop spreading rumors. But the sightings continued to come in from his own trusted crews. They reported seeing glowing eyes in the darkness and hearing hissing sounds echoing through the pipes. Teddy May decided to go down into the sewers himself to investigate the claims and restore order to his department. Character Bible: Teddy May is a Caucasian man in his 50s with a weathered face and a thick mustache. He wears a heavy wool coat and a fedora hat and carries a flashlight. He has the stern look of a man who has seen everything. He gathered a team of his most trusted men and descended into the labyrinth beneath the city. They moved cautiously through the sludge and the slime while holding their breath. The air was thick with the smell of methane and decay. They swept their flashlight beams across the dark water and the crumbling brick walls. For hours they saw nothing but rats and garbage. But then, according to the legend, Teddy May saw something that changed his mind forever. The superintendent did not hesitate once he confirmed the presence of the reptiles in his domain. Character Bible: Teddy May is a Caucasian man in his 50s with a weathered face and a thick mustache. He wears a heavy wool coat and a fedora hat and carries a flashlight. He has the stern look of a man who has seen everything. He declared war on the subterranean invaders and organized a campaign to eradicate them. His men used poison bait and flooding techniques to flush out the reptiles from the main lines. Some accounts even claim that they carried rifles and hunted the beasts in the tunnels. It was a surreal battle between man and nature in the most artificial environment on Earth. Teddy May later reported that the campaign was a success. However, biologists and herpetologists have always been skeptical of these claims and the biology of the animal. Alligators are cold-blooded reptiles that rely on external heat sources to regulate their body temperature and survive. The sewers of New York City are not warm tropical swamps like the ones found in the South. While the water does not freeze in the winter, it is far too cold for an alligator to thrive. Without sunlight and warmth, an alligator would become lethargic and eventually die of exposure. The lack of ultraviolet light would also cause metabolic bone disease and deformities. The idea of a colony of breeding alligators living for years in the dark is biologically impossible according to science. The temperature is not the only barrier to survival in the hostile environment of the sewer system. The water in the sewers is a toxic cocktail of human waste and industrial runoff and household chemicals. It is filled with bacteria and viruses that would overwhelm the immune system of most animals. While alligators are hardy creatures, they are not invincible to high levels of toxins. The sheer volume of pollution in the 1930s would have been lethal to aquatic life. There were no environmental regulations, and factories dumped raw waste directly into the system. It is hard to imagine any complex organism surviving in such conditions for long, let alone growing to a massive size. A subgenre of the myth involves albino alligators, which adds a supernatural element to the story. The story goes that the lack of sunlight caused the alligators to lose their pigmentation over generations of breeding. People whispered about white ghosts swimming in the sewage and hunting in the dark. This adds an extra layer of horror to the tale, as the image is striking. However, albinism is a genetic mutation and not an adaptation to the dark environment. Animals that evolve in caves often lose their pigment, but this process takes thousands of years. It does not happen in a few decades. The albino sewer gator is a biological fantasy, but it remains a potent symbol of the legend. Despite the scientific evidence, the sightings did not stop with the 1935 incident in Harlem. Over the decades, there have been sporadic reports of alligators in the city appearing in strange places. In nearly every case, the animal turns out to be a discarded pet that was recently released. In 2001, a small caiman was found in Central Park near the Harlem Meer. In 2010, an alligator was spotted in Queens crossing a street. These animals are usually found in ponds or rivers, rather than deep in the sewer system. They are terrified and freezing, and usually close to death when they are discovered by the authorities. Why does this legend persist if the evidence is so weak and the science is so contradictory? The answer lies in human psychology and our relationship with the urban environment. We have a primal fear of what lies beneath us in the dark places we cannot see. The sewer represents the unconscious mind where we bury our waste and our secrets and our shame. The idea that something dangerous is lurking down there resonates with our deepest anxieties about nature biting back. It is a modern version of the dragons that lived in caves in ancient mythology. The city is a place of order and control, but the sewer is a place of chaos. The story of the sewer alligator has become a staple of urban folklore that is told across the world. It is passed down from generation to generation and changes slightly with each telling. Sometimes the alligators are mutants created by toxic waste. Sometimes they are guarded by a secret society of homeless people who live in the tunnels. The details do not matter as much as the core feeling of the story, which is fear. It is a way for city dwellers to inject a sense of mystery and danger into their mundane lives. It reminds us that even in a concrete jungle, there are still wild things that we cannot control. The legend has permeated pop culture and appeared in countless forms of media over the last century. It has appeared in movies and television shows and video games as a recurring trope. It was a plot point in the movie Alligator in 1980, which featured a giant mutant beast. It appeared in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles franchise as a nod to the myth. It is a reference that everyone understands instantly without needing an explanation. This cultural reinforcement keeps the story alive in the collective consciousness. Even people who know it is scientifically impossible still feel a twinge of fear when they walk past a storm drain. Let us return to the 1935 incident for a moment to analyze the most likely reality. Skeptics have analyzed the photograph and the accounts from that day with a critical eye. Some have suggested that the Alligator fell off a steamer ship arriving from Florida. Others think it escaped from a nearby pet shop that was keeping it illegally. The most likely explanation is that it was indeed a pet that had been dumped shortly before it was found. It could not have survived the winter in that storm drain for very long. It was likely in the sewer for only a few hours or days before the boys found it. We must also question the reliability of Teddy May as a witness and a narrator of history. He was a man who loved a good story and was known to exaggerate for effect. Some historians believe he embraced the alligator legend to keep people out of the sewers he managed. He wanted to discourage explorers and curious teenagers from entering his domain and getting hurt. By validating the rumors, he created a scary deterrent that was more effective than a fence. It is also possible that he mistook large rats or floating debris for alligators in the poor light. The human mind plays tricks in the dark. The sewer system of New York City has changed drastically since the 1930s, and for the better. It is now monitored by sensors and cameras, an advanced technology that tracks flow and blockage. Workers wear advanced safety gear and follow strict protocols when they enter the tunnels. If there were a colony of giant reptiles down there, we would certainly know about it by now. Maintenance crews traverse the tunnels every day to keep the city running. They see plenty of rats and roaches and strange items flushed down toilets. But they do not see alligators. The modern sewer is a place of engineering and sanitation. The mechanics of flushing an alligator are also problematic when you consider the plumbing of the time. Modern toilets have narrow pipes and sharp bends that are designed to prevent clogs. A baby alligator might fit, but it would likely get stuck or injured during the flush. If it made it to the main sewer line, it would face a torrent of rushing water. The physical trauma of the journey would be severe and likely fatal. The survival rate of a flushed reptile is incredibly low according to experts. This practical reality undermines the origin story of the legend. It is much more likely that unwanted pets are released into parks. The connection to Florida remains a key part of the narrative and the history of the legend. In the early 20th century, Florida was seen as a wild and exotic frontier to many Northerners. Bringing a piece of that wilderness back to the civilized North was a status symbol for tourists. The alligator represented the danger and the heat and the mystery of the South. When the animal became inconvenient, it was discarded like trash by the owners. This reflects a broader attitude towards nature in that era of consumerism. Animals were commodities to be bought and sold and thrown away without a second thought. The sewer alligator falls under the umbrella of cryptozoology, which is the study of hidden animals. While most cryptids like Bigfoot or the Loch Ness Monster live in remote wilderness, the sewer gator is unique. It lives in the most densely populated place on the continent right beneath our feet. It is an urban cryptid that belongs to the city and its people. This makes it accessible and terrifying in a way that other monsters are not. You do not have to hike into the woods to find it. It could be right under your car or your house. The media plays a crucial role in maintaining the legend and keeping the fear alive in the public. Every time a small caiman is found in a city pond, the headlines scream about sewer gators. News outlets know that the phrase attracts readers and generates interest and revenue. They link isolated incidents to the grand mythology of the 1935 sighting. This creates a feedback loop where the legend fuels the news and the news fuels the legend. The nuance of the situation is often lost in the pursuit of a sensational story. A 12-inch lizard in a park pond becomes a monster. New York is not the only city with this legend, as stories have appeared all over the world. Similar stories have been told in Paris and London, and other major metropolises with old sewers. It seems that wherever there is a complex underground system, there are monsters to fill it. However, New York remains the epicenter of the myth and the standard bearer. The sheer size of the city and its cultural dominance make its version the definitive one. The phrase New York sewer alligator is the brand name for the phenomenon. Other cities are just imitations of the original nightmare. At the heart of the story is the human element and the people who interact with the myth. It is about the boys who found the gator in 1935 and became local legends. It is about Teddy May and his flashlight and his crusade against the beasts. It is about the parents who bought exotic pets they could not handle and made a mistake. These are real people who made choices that created a myth that outlived them. The alligator is just a prop in a human drama about responsibility and fear. We create our own monsters, and then we tell stories about them. While science tells us it is impossible, the legend refuses to die, and likely never will. There is always that tiny sliver of doubt that keeps the mystery alive in our minds. The sewers are vast, and much of the system is old and unmapped and forgotten. Could there be a warm spot somewhere near a steam pipe that sustains a small population? Could a small group of reptiles hold on in a forgotten chamber deep underground? The rational mind says no, but the imagination says maybe. That maybe is all a legend needs to survive for another century. The legacy of the New York sewer alligator is not biological but cultural and enduring. It serves as a reminder of the wildness that lies beneath the surface of civilization. It is a cautionary tale about the consequences of interfering with nature and bringing it into the city. It is a thrilling mystery that adds depth to the city streets and the history of New York. Whether they exist in flesh and blood or only in our minds, these creatures have claimed their territory. They own the dark places in the map of New York City and always will.